Hello, students. So this week or these next couple of weeks, we're going to go ahead and do a painting that uses impasto. And impasto literally just translates to paste. And the idea is that paint doesn't need to be flat. It can have body. It can have a sculptural form to it. And, eliminating the use of brushes or the way that you apply the paint can really affect the outcome of the stylistic outcome of the piece. Nothing really changes as far as mixing color. All that is the same. But just notice that there's a difference. There's almost a sculptural quality to this piece because of the raised quality of the paint. And that can simply be done by just adding a sort of gel medium or a cold wax medium or something that gives the paint body so that it actually raises from the page. So here's some examples. Sorry, I didn't write this artist's name down, but you can see his signature in the bottom there. Uh, but this painting is done entirely with a palette knife. No brushes whatsoever, just a palette knife. And you can tell it really gives it a stylistic look. In fact, I think it really works well, particularly on these streets that seem as if they're almost wet, and you get these cool reflections. There's a way that it just, I don't know, it just seems to just talk about that reflective quality of a wet street. And that you get that quality with a palette knife or using the edge of the palette knife to paint in these little tiny, oh, I don't know, fall branches on these trees that have lost their leaves. It just gives it a very interesting look. And that's what we're attempting to do here. Change the parameters of how we paint. Eliminate the use of brushes and see what we can get with something else. Now you can use a palette knife, just like this artist, or you could use other materials as well if you want to try using a sponge, or we try some things like wiping things away and tonking. There's all different ways of getting different looks. And it's just a fun way to play with the application of our paint. Here's another artist. Again, I didn't write his name down, I'm sorry, but you can see it there in the corner, his signature. Again, just another one with that palette knife. It's beautiful. It's very colorful, and those colors are very bold. Something about, too, the way that you apply this paint, there's not a lot of mixing going on your canvas like you can blend with a paintbrush, so you get these really bold patches of light, almost mosaic-like. I'm sure you're all familiar with this image, Van Gogh, Starry Night. And one thing that you may not realize about this piece is that if you look closely, it is also very impasto. There's a lot of a doughy, pasty quality to this application of paint. And in fact, you can see the canvas showing through. So there are a lot of places where after he applied the paint, that canvas is just coming through. Let's go back to the original. Interesting, right? And here's another artist. Gosh, I was really bad about writing names down this week. I'm sorry. I can look them up for you later if you're really interested. But again, just an example of how that application of paint is different without a brush. There's just just thick, doughy quality. It's like you can touch it. You can feel it. It's sculptural. Same artist. Here you can really tell that they're putting pieces on with their palette knife, but also scraping pieces away. Places where they were pulling paint that they didn't want on there, just pulling it off and adding more and just really letting it get thick and create a sculptural quality. Here's a close-up of the beard. Now these are some student examples. And so what I had them do in the classroom is we set up some shoes just kind of in a random way. And the only caveat for doing this painting was that they weren't allowed to use brushes. So, I mean, in some cases, some people used fingers, but for the most part, people used palette knives as a way to apply. That's probably the most traditional. And it worked really good, particularly in this piece, when they were putting the sort of fabric of this old-fashioned suitcase down. It almost just feels like that kind of, oh, I don't know, paisley, not paisley, I'm sorry, plaid fabric that you would find on a canvas suitcase. Really cool. And then there's a stylistic look to these shoes. The way that the application of paint goes on, it takes away that ability for you to overwork. And so there's almost like a confidence and a stylistic look to it that just happens when you use that kind of technique. Here you can see up close just how those colors sort of optically blend from a distance, but then up close you can really tell how those paints are on there. And it just makes it visually exciting to look at. Another wonderful piece. I really love this one. It's just that copper pot, a little reflection of blue, the way they captured this almost, oh, it was like a almost muslin type silk fabric. It really feels like that in this painting. And these bottles, oh gosh, you can even see this purple bottle coming through the green. Get that little difference in color. And all of this, again, just done with a palette knife. This particular artist actually won a prize in one of the student juried shows. I think she got top marks and got $500 for this piece, which I think is a kind of a nice thing. I love this little broken edge. Here again, this is that old-fashioned fabric briefcase, or I'm sorry, suitcase. And so here on the edge, that palette knife application really feels like that, oh, the trim has been broken, it's kind of torn up, you can see the leather coming through. It just works really well. And I think this artist in particular used a lot of her finger for maybe on the shoes that were very glossy. So I mean, you can do that by all means. And by all means, you don't need to use just your fingers and a palette knife. You can grab a piece of broccoli out of your fridge and use it as a sort of makeshift paintbrush, or take a sponge and attempt applying paint that way or pulling it away. This is really meant for an opportunity just to experiment and have fun. Another one, sort of a close-up of some old Adidas sneakers. Just has a very stylistic look to it. Now, for this assignment, you don't have to do shoes. I mean, that's just I don't know, it could be a recommendation if you wish. It is our last still life, so for some of you that might be an excitement. But pick whatever you wish. You can do shoes, or you can set up something like this with the bottles and pitcher. Simpler objects are obviously going to be a little bit easier because you're not going to have the luxury of having small detail brushes. But that being said, you can take something like a toothpick and wipe away little corners, or you can use the edge of your palette knife to get sharp edges. There's lots that you can do with this.